Prices worse. Talking about Venezuela once again.
Systemic important banks. They removed the 1,000 thing on there called monetary awareness. Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some RTD news. And I wanted to check in for a quick minute, share with you some interesting stories as they unfold, just to shine more light on the importance of looking at global events and using them as a guide to what could possibly come to a country as well as a bank near you. And so recent video footage from China that took place in the evening, which lets us know that during the daytime as of yesterday, maybe the 12-hour period prior to, there was some information given to the depositors in Henan branch that has been experiencing issues over the last several months. We've been touching on this for quite some time now, but it looks like information provided has officially announced that there has been a de facto bail-in, or the depositors' savings being turned into bank capital, i.e. investment products. So we're going to touch on that as well as share with you a couple other stories. And as always, there's more stories than I can ever touch in one little news stream. But I'll do the best I can just to shine some light on some things that caught my attention. And we'll definitely dive into more news this evening. But anyway, welcome to the live stream. Hope everyone's doing well. First time here, definitely let your voice be heard in the comment section as well as the chat. Let me know where you're checking in from. And if you're new, definitely hit that subscribe button as well as the bell notification. Hopefully you are informed, as well as check in with us on all the social media platforms. As you guys can see here, there's a variety of alternative sources to stay plugged in throughout the day. I do my best, as well as the community members add information throughout the day. So definitely check in there. And before I dive into the articles, as always, want to make sure I keep everybody up to date on the latest. So if you guys are interested, once again, silver prices, gold prices is trending down. Therefore, it's a great opportunity, in my opinion. And the Bullion Max discount price here for 5 ounces is available to the end of this month. We definitely want to encourage people to take advantage of it. If you're interested, definitely link is in the description, rather, if you want it. And then also RTD Locals. I'm going to try to check in tonight, having some technical issues on my end, but working it out. It's a little educational curve. So I'll do my best to log in tonight after our live stream to check in. This is the best alternative way to connect with the channel off air. And if you're also interested in being a blessing to the channel, consider donating as well. But link beneath this video gives you all the resources, the blog, the IT quiz, reports, and free books, free video sources. Everything I've been doing for the last 8 years can be found on the link below this video. So take advantage of that if you are new to the channel. All right, let's jump right in. So I want to talk about banks. So banks are, once again, we've been talking a lot about the insolvency when it comes to banks, just because the funds that are there are not really there. They're just ledgers or digits on a privately controlled ledger, nowhere near enough cash to make everyone whole if everyone decided to run down and try to get a hold of what they think is there. So this is an interesting little clip here from Q2 investment bank revenues. And as you guys can see here, all the too big to fail banks are not doing too well right now due to the current global liquidity crunch in reference to everybody needing dollars and there not being enough to supply and meet demand. And so therefore, there's a lot of issues when it comes to the conventional banking model. And it's my projection that between now and the end of this year, we're going to hear more issues to do with banks. And I think one thing we can learn about the banking situation is what's happening right now in China. And so this is just a little article I want to pick up on before I lead into the head story. But this is as of this past weekend, but I think it's relevant to give a backdrop as to what's going on. But it says 5 unanswered questions about the Henan bank crisis. And just 2 bullet points here. It says customers took to the streets in protest after finding savings at 4 rural banks in Henan province and one in neighboring and who had been frozen. It says President Xi Jinping has placed economic stability as a top priority and vowed to strengthen supervision within the state-dominated financial system. So we all know about the protests in front of banks and how it got a little rough out there, but it died down temporarily because people were told and promised that they would get their funds back. But it looks like something's changed. And so here's just an interesting article here that gives you more of a backdrop as to what's going on. But we first talked about this when it first surfaced back in the springtime. And it says here, rural savers have been taken to the streets in Zhengzhou, the capital of China's central Henan province, after finding that their deposits at 5 banks have been frozen since mid-April. So imagine April, May, June, and now July. And then all of a sudden being told that your funds, China takes rolled on the streets to scare Henan bank protesters. And this comes after information was provided that their deposits rather, are no longer theirs. It will be used as basically bank collateral. And so it says the Chinese Communist Party's tanks on Wednesday rolled on the streets to scare protesters amid large-scale protests in the province by bank depositors over the release of their frozen funds. It says the incident comes in light of the Henan branch of the Bank of China declaring the people's savings in their branch are investment products and can't be withdrawn, added the media. And so with tanks hitting the streets, it reminds them of the Tiananmen Square massacre, which took place in 1989 and brought back a lot of unpleasant memories of that event there and so forth. But it says on July 10th, more than 1,000 depositors gathered outside the branch of the country's central bank, the People Bank of China, to launch their largest protest. And as I remember talking about a couple of weeks ago, how they meaning the government there, decided to try to limit and to restrict protesting in front of banks by basically taking their health app that has red, green, and I think is yellow, red, and green in reference to allowing them access to public transportation as well as just being able to roam freely in the streets there. And they automatically turned, when they got wind, the government got wind of people heading to banks, they basically turned them all red, basically making it illegal for people to protest and be out in the public. And so they ultimately weaponized the health apps against the people to prevent a protest, but it didn't stop them from doing such. And so here is the actual footage. I actually put some of this on the Telegram page here. But as you guys can see here, I'll zoom in some so you can see. But I just said China's putting tanks on the streets to protect the banks. That's what we're being told. This is because the Henan Bank of branch of China said that people's savings are now investment products. So here's a short clip here. As you guys can see, I'll mute this. But as you guys can see here, in the evening, we got tanks on the streets and protesters or bystanders looking by as there's tanks in the street. So assuming that tomorrow, sometime during the day, we're going to hear more about this, because I would assume that once the information was provided that their savings were going to be bailed in a sense, that will definitely lead to more unrest. But yet, once again, how can tanks actually prevent people from, heading towards the banks and actually trying to get inside the banks? Not sure, but it definitely poses a hell of a scare, and it gives us on the West something to think about when it comes to the insolvency of banks, because we're witnessing in real time the unraveling of the monetary system. And where is all the people's money located at? Primarily, it's in financial institutions, as well. It's in hedge funds. It's in products they think is theirs, as well as in banks, which are going to be exposed as being not really your products in a sense. But anyway, more information here. We'll dive into that further this evening. But here's something else worth talking about real quick. This is from yesterday, but I wanted to definitely touch on it. And this has to do with the current gathering of the, I think it's G20 in over in Seoul, South Korea. And so Janet Yellen came out with some very harsh words, and you can tell it's solely towards China and Russia with the rhetoric that she's out there preaching. But ultimately, look at this headline itself. Yellen vows tough U.S. measures against countries abusing economic order. And what exactly is abusing the economic order? Ultimately, in my opinion, it means basically bypassing, going around the dollar, and trying to continue to roll out their alternative structure for a world minus the need for trading in Federal Reserve liabilities. And so here's just two quick things worth mentioning, which it says, quote from China, from Janet Yellen here. It says, we, referring to the U.S., can't allow countries like China to use their market position in key raw materials, technology, or products to disrupt our economy and exercise unwanted geopolitical leverage. It's unfortunate that China is in this position right now because we exported and canceled all our manufacturing here, allowing countries to basically remove American-made products and ship it to where it was more pleasant and favorable, financially speaking, into China's hands. And now all of a sudden, they're having issues with that. Come on now. And then on the more news here, here's something towards Russia that I thought was interesting as well. Let me find it real quick. I tried to highlight it, but I couldn't do it. But this is directly to China. It says, quote, this is Jenny Yellen once again, it says, economic integration has been weaponized by Russia, she said, decrying the impact of the war on supply chain vulnerabilities, as well as log jams and shortages that have driven prices higher around the world. Says we will impose harsh consequences on those countries that abuse and break that order, as we have demonstrated with our unprecedented response to Russia's aggression, referring to sanctions and the lack of effectiveness in reference to what they think they might have been accomplishing with, basically closing off the world towards world water resources. But anyway, so Yellen talking big and bad, basically saying that China and Russia, they're not playing along, and therefore they're going to get tougher, which ultimately means more sanctions, as if they actually work. But once again, it just further isolates the U.S., forces other nations to basically dump dollars at a much faster pace. And speaking of dumping dollars, here is some very interesting information as well. China's holdings of U.S. treasuries fall below 1 trillion, report shows. And so they have obviously been putting those reserves to work for them, to where they're dialing back and de-dollarizing ultimately. And so it says here, the amount of U.S. Treasury securities held by China fell below 1 trillion. The data released on Monday. It says the latest report that the Treasury Department showed the holdings of U.S. Treasury securities by China fell to 981 billion in May, down from 1 trillion in April compared to May 2022. China's holdings fell 9%. It's the first time since China's reported holdings of U.S. Treasury securities has been below 1 trillion since 2010. And it's probably good to say that China will not be looking to further fund and support the weaponization of the dollar anytime soon. So I don't see them being buyers of U.S. liabilities. Therefore, who does that leave stuck needing to support and buy those things? It will be the Federal Reserve directly at some point down the line when they're called upon to do such, outside of what's already happening now. So, and then on the last note here, here's something that I think is very interesting. It looks like the sanctions have caused more harm than good, and the European Union or Germany or Brussels are going to backtrack. And so it says Europe plans to unfreeze Russian funds to allow food transactions. So according to this little headline here from the info.bricks.org, there's word out of Brussels that they're putting together some information or some documents saying that they're going to bit by bit allow some of Russia's funds to flow freely. Therefore, basically saying, skip our U.S. allies, and we're going to try to allow them to get some of their funds back so we can get food for the upcoming year. So real quick here, it's an interesting article, but I'll save you guys all that. And it just said, let me zoom in some so you guys can see it. It says, despite the sanctions that have been illegally imposed on Russia, the West is gradually beginning to realize that to ensure financial food security, it will be necessary to review the measures implemented so far. Apparently, the European Union is already starting to announce some steps in this direction. According to reports, the European bloc plans to unfreeze some sanctioned funds from Russia to allow food and fertilizer transactions to be carried out. It says in the report mentions documents and internal sources to unfreeze some funds that Russian banks enable trade in food. This is also important information about a possible project to promote the facilitation of food exports from Russia, ports that have had services to the West suspended due to packages of sanctions. So not only are they going to allow Russia to get some of their funds back, but they're probably going to start allowing and helping secure some of that food directly through European ports and things of that nature into Russia. So it looks like, as of right now, if this goes through, Europe, as well as all the other bordering Russian countries that have jumped on board with direct currency swaps, as well as meeting Putin's demand and actually paying in Russian ruble directly, is working quite well for Russia, despite all the narrative coming out of the West saying that it's because of Russia and Putin price hike and Ukraine. Right. It's just all smoke and mirrors. Everything is working according to their plan. More distractions than ever, while the world is literally clamoring for real world resources amongst all the other issues, such as the heat and the possible executive order on climate change, which spells trouble if they get to that point here in the U.S. to where they start trying to ration energy, water, and things of that nature, or impose some type of national emergency situation where they talk about locking down or backtracking, further hurting the economy. So who knows what's on their radar, but it's definitely not going to be something good. But Anyway, yeah, we're going to touch back in tonight. Just wanted to share what's happening according to what has crossed my radar. I want to encourage everybody who's tuned in, if you have not already, definitely join the social media threads, in particular Telegram and Discord. Share articles, news stories. I appreciate the community members that have shared things. I have more things to share this evening, but wanted to keep this sweet and short and directly to the point. Just basically highlighting how unless you actually are able to get the funds when you need them most, do you really own them will be the question. And I think ownership is going to be brought into question real soon on a lot of things. And especially it's really being exposed right now when it comes to the crypto space with the continual unwinding of all these companies. Just today, there's more exchanges halting or freezing accounts, as well as the announcement of more entities going belly up. I have stories here that I show on Telegram throughout the day. And I'm sure for people who keep a hold of those things, you know what I'm talking about. But let me just share with you real quickly just the development of those stories, as well as some exchanges that apparently are freezing funds. So to my knowledge, we're looking at least 6 or so different funds or exchanges, rather. It says crypto lender Vault owes $63 million to retail investors after halting withdrawal. So once again, another freezing of accounts, therefore funds locked in. What funds? What good are funds if you can't get them when you need them? And then here's another one. Crypto exchange ZipMax halts withdrawals due to volatile market conditions. So halting funds, freezing funds. We haven't, in my opinion, seen the worst of any of this, but this is just what's happening. It's worth touching on because more people need to be plugged in and in tune with what's going on, just because, you know, unless you go get it for yourself, alternative media wise, you won't hear about it. But anyway, tanks in the street. We'll find out what happened. Hopefully it does not get bloody. But once again, you never know. There's a lot of emotion pent up around finances, especially when people have their entire lives centered in the hands of people who are no longer able to control the narrative, as well as produce those funds that people think are theirs. So anyway, that's all I have for this little news wrap up. Check back in tonight, 9 o'clock. We're going to check in, talk more. Definitely want to hear from you guys, so feel free to give me a call, and love to get your thoughts and ideas. There's all types of stories to touch on, so definitely bring some thoughts, ideas. We'll get that done tonight. But anyway, be blessed, be safe. See you guys later tonight.
The next recession.
Recession will be a recession.
We're going to hit a recession.
The date of the next recession.
A U.S.-only recession typically lasts 8 to 10 months.
A crash is coming. Now, whether it's 6 months from now, 12 months, 36 months, no one knows.
If you have the right plan to set up, you can make a lot of money from this.